Good day, ma'am. I'm going to report my PowerPoint presentation about on Module 3. Lesson 3. Study on the institutional agencies in the Philippines, Code of Kalansiaw, Bilibid Prison, San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm, Iwahig Penal Colony, Correctional Institution for Women, New Bilibid Prison, Davao Penal Colony, Sablayan Penal Farm, Leyte Regional Prison, Provincial Jail System and Public Attorney's Office or PAO. Study on the institutional agencies in the Philippines. Institutional agencies in the Philippines: Department of Finance, Department of Trade and Industry, Department of Tourism, Department of Science and Technology, Department of Education, Pag-ibig Fund, Department of Agriculture, Department of Budget and Management, Department of Energy, Commission on the Filipino Language, Pag-asa, Philippine Statistics Authority, Philippine Economic Zone Authority, Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, Department of Justice, Department of Social Welfare and Development, Philippine Nuclear Research Institute, Climate Change Commission, United States Agency for International Development. Department of Finance. So, the Department of Finance or DOF in Filipino, kagawaran ng pananalapi, is the executive department of the Philippine government responsible for the formulation, institutionalization, and administration of fiscal policies, management of the financial resources of the government. Supervision of the revenue operations of all local government units, the review, approval, and management of all public sector debt, and the rationalization, privatization, and public accountability of corporations and assets owned, controlled, or acquired by the government. So, the Department of Finance is responsible for the management of the government's financial resources. Its duties include policy formulation, revenue generation, resource mobilization, debt management, and financial market development. Next is the Department of Trade and Industry. The Department of Trade and Industry, or in Filipino, Kagawaran ng Kalakalan at Industriya, abbreviated as DTI, is the executive department of the Philippine government, tasked as the main economic catalyst that enables innovative, competitive, job-generating, inclusive business and empowers consumers. It acts as a catalyst for intensified private sector activity in order to accelerate and sustain economic growth. Through comprehensive industrial growth strategy, progressive and socially responsible trade liberalization and deregulation programs, and policy making designed for the expansion and diversification of Philippine trade, both domestic and foreign. So the DTI is responsible for realizing the country's goal of globally competitive and innovative industry and services sector that contribute to inclusive growth and employment generation. Department of Tourism. The Department of Tourism, or in Filipino, Kagawaran ng Turismo, or abbreviated as DOT, is the executive department of the Philippine government responsible for the regulation of the Philippine tourism industry and the promotion of the Philippines as a tourist destination. So, the Department of Tourism or DOT is mandated to encourage, promote, and develop tourism as a major socio-economic activity to generate foreign currency and local employment and to spread the benefits of tourism to a wider segment of the population with the support, assistance, and cooperation of both the private and public sectors. So, the DOT assures the safe, convenient, enjoyable stay and travel of foreign and local tourists in the country. Next is the Department of Science and Technology. The Department of Science and Technology is the executive department of the Philippine government responsible for the coordination of science and technology-related projects in the Philippines, and to formulate policies and projects in the fields of science and technology in support of national development. So, the Department of Science and Technology, or DOST, is the premier science and technology body in the country charged with the twin mandate of providing central direction, leadership, and coordination of all scientific and technological activities, and of formulating policies, programs, and projects to support national development. Next is the Department of Education. The Department of Education is the executive department of the Philippine government, responsible for ensuring access to promoting equity in and improving the quality of basic education. It is the main agency tasked to manage and govern the Philippine system of basic education. So its main agency tasked to manage and govern the Philippine system of basic education. It is the chief formulator of Philippine education policy and responsible for the Philippine primary and secondary school systems. So the department is currently led by the Secretary of Education, nominated by the President of the Philippines and confirmed by the Commission on Appointments. The Secretary is a member of the Cabinet. The current Secretary of Education is Leonor Briones. Presently, its mission is to provide quality basic education that is equitably accessible to all and lay the foundation for lifelong learning and service for the common good. It has changed its vision statement, removing a phrase that some groups deem to be too sectarian for a government situation. So, the Department of Education, or DepEd, formulates, implements, and coordinates policies, plans, programs, and projects in the areas of formal and non-formal basic education. Next is Pag-ibig Fund. The Home Development Mutual Fund, commonly known as the Pag-ibig Fund, is a government-owned and controlled corporation under the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development of the Philippines. So they are responsible for the administration of the National Savings Program and affordable shelter financing for Filipinos. So the Pag-ibig Fund seeks to improve the quality of life of its members through the administration of the funds in trust for them, which shall be used exclusively for their benefit, such as entitlement to dividends from their savings and providing access to multi-purpose loans and housing loans. Next is the Department of Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture is the executive department of the Philippine government responsible for the promotion of agricultural and fisheries development and growth. It has its headquarters at Elliptical Road, corner Visayas Avenue, Diliman, Quezon City. So the department is currently led by the Secretary of Agriculture and nominated by the President of the Philippines and confirmed by the Commission on Appointments. So the Secretary is a member of the Cabinet. The current Secretary is William Dar, who assumed office on August 5, 2019. So the Department of Education is there the one to provide leadership on food, agriculture, natural resources, rural development, nutrition and related issues based on public policy, the best available science and effective management. Next is the Department of Budget and Management. The Department of Budget and Management is an executive body under the Office of the President of the Philippines. So it is responsible for the sound and efficient use of government resources for national development and also as an instrument for the meeting of national socio-economic and political development goals. So the Department of Budget and Management is they're the one who lead public expenditure management to ensure the equitable, prudent, transparent, and accountable allocation and use of public funds to improve the quality of life of each and every Filipino. Next is the Department of Energy. The Department of Energy, or in Filipino, Kagawaran ng Enerhiya, abbreviated as DOE, is the executive department of the Philippine government responsible for preparing, integrating, manipulating, organizing, coordinating, supervising, and controlling all plans, programs, projects, and activities of the government relative to energy exploration, development, utilization, distribution, and conservation. So the Department of Energy is there responsible for the formulation and implementation of all plans, programs, projects, and activities of the government related to energy exploration, development, utilization, distribution, and conservation. Next is the Commission on the Filipino Language, or CFL, also referred to as the Commission sa Wikang Filipino, or KWF, is the official regulating body of the Filipino language and the official government institution tasked with developing, preserving, and promoting the various local Philippine languages. The Commission was established in accordance with the 1987 Constitution of the Philippines. So it was established by Republic Act No. 7104 in 1991. The Commission is a replacement for the Institute of Philippine Languages, or IPL, or Linangan ng mga Wika sa Pilipinas, that was set up in 1987, which was a replacement of the older Institute of National Language, INL, Surian ng Wikang Pambansa. So it was established in 1937 as the first government agency to foster the development of a Philippine national language. So the Commission on the Filipino Language is tasked to undertake, coordinate, and promote researches for the development, propagation, and preservation of Filipino and other Philippine languages. Next is PAG-ASA, or the Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration, or in Filipino is Pangasiwaan ng Pilipinas sa Serbisyong Atmosferiko, Geophysico at Astronomico, or abbreviated as PAG-ASA. So, PAG-ASA, which means hope, as in the Tagalog word PAG-ASA, is the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services, or NMHS. So it is the agency of the Philippines who is mandated to provide protection against natural calamities and to ensure the safety, well-being, and economic security of all the people, and for the promotion of national progress by undertaking scientific and technological services in meteorology, hydrology, climatology, astronomy, and other geophysical sciences. So it was created on December 8, 1972 by reorganizing the Weather Bureau. So PAG-ASA now serves as one of the scientific and technological services institutes of the Department of Science and Technology. So the PAG-ASA is the Philippine National Institution dedicated to provide flood and typhoon warnings, public weather forecasts and advisories, meteorological, astronomical, climatological, and other specialized information and services primarily for the protection of life and property and in support of economic productivity. Next is the Philippine Statistics Authority. The Philippine Statistics Authority, or in Filipino, Pangasiwaan ng Estadistika ng Pilipinas, abbreviated as PSA, is the central statistical authority of the Philippine government that collects, compiles, analyzes, and publishes statistical information on economic, social, demographic, political affairs, and general affairs of the people of the Philippines, and enforces the civil registration functions in the country. So it is an attached agency of the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA, for purposes of policy coordination. The PSA comprises the PSA Board and offices on sectorial, statistics, censuses, and technical coordination, civil registration, Philippine Registry Office, central support, and field statistical services. The national statistician is appointed by the President of the Philippines from a list of nominees submitted by a special committee and endorsed by the PSA Board Chairperson, is the head of the PSA and has a rank equivalent to an undersecretary. Aside from directing and supervising the general administration of the PSA, the national statistician is the one who provides overall direction in the implementation of the civil registry law and related issuances and exercise technical supervision over the civil registrars as Civil Registrar General. So the PSA, or the Philippine Statistics Authority, is there the one who plan, develop, prescribe, disseminate, and enforce policies, rules, and regulations, and coordinate government-wide programs governing the production of official statistics, general-purpose statistics, civil registration services, and inclusive identification system. Philippine Economic Zone Authority. So the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, or PIZA, is a government agency in the Philippines attached to the Department of Trade and Industry. It created to help promote investments in the export-oriented manufacturing industry into the country by assisting investors in registering and facilitating their business operations and providing tax incentives. PIZA also assists investors to locate in-service facilities inside selected areas in the country, or areas are called PIZA Special Economic Zones, which are usually business process outsourcing and knowledge process outsourcing firms. So there are also other activities eligible for PISA registration and incentives include establishment and operation within special economic zones for tourism, medical tourism, logistics, and warehouse services, economic zone development and operation, and facilities providers. So, PISA is also the Philippine government agency tasked to extend assistance, register, grant incentives to and facilitate the business operations of investors in export-oriented manufacturing and service facilities inside selected areas throughout the country. Next is the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. So, the Philippines Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, or in Filipino, Kawanihan ng Pangisdaan at Yamang Tubig, abbreviated as BFAR, is an agency of the Philippine government under the Department of Agriculture, responsible for the development, improvement, law enforcement, management, and conservation of the Philippines' fisheries and aquatic resources. So, the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources is responsible for the development, improvement, management, and conservation of the country's fishery and aquatic resources. Next is the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, also known as PHIVOLCS, in Tagalog, Surian ng Pilipinas sa Volcanolohiya at Sismolohiya, is a Philippine national institution dedicated to provide information on the activities of volcanoes, earthquakes, and tsunamis, as well as other specialized information and services primarily for the protection of life and property and in support of economic productivity and sustainable development. It is one of the service agencies of the Department of Science and Technology. They also monitors volcano, earthquake, and tsunami activity and issues warnings as necessary. It is mandated to mitigate disasters that may arise from such volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, tsunamis, and other related geotectonic phenomena. So, the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, is a service institute of Department of Science and Technology that is principally mandated to mitigate disasters that may arise from volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, tsunami, and other related geotectonic phenomena. Next is the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice, or in Filipino, Kagawaran ng Katarungan, or abbreviated as DOJ, is under the Executive Department of the Philippine Government, responsible for upholding the rule of law in the Philippines. It is the government's principal law agency, serving as its legal counsel and prosecution arm. It has its headquarters at the DOJ building in Ermita, Manila. So the DOJ they are the one who acts as the principal law agency and legal counsel of the government. So it serves as the government's prosecution arm and administers the government's criminal justice system by investigating crimes, prosecuting offenders, and overseeing the correctional system. Next is the Department of Social Welfare and Development. So, the Philippines Department of Social Welfare and Development, in Filipino, Kagawaran ng Kagalingan at Pagpapaunlad ng Panlipunan, or also known as DSWD, is the executive department of the Philippine government responsible for the protection of the social welfare of rights of Filipinos and to promote the social development. So, the Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, is the primary government agency mandated to develop, implement, and coordinate social protection and poverty reduction solutions for and with the poor, vulnerable, and disadvantaged. Next is the Philippine Nuclear Research Institute, also known as PNRI, is a government agency under the Department of Science and Technology, mandated to undertake research and development activities in the peaceful uses of nuclear energy, institute regulations on the said uses, and carry out the enforcement of said regulations to protect the health and safety of radiation workers and the general public. So, the Philippine Nuclear Research Institute, or PNRI, formerly the Philippine Atomic Energy Commission, or PAEC, is the sole agency of the government mandated to advance and regulate the safe and peaceful applications of nuclear science and technology in the Philippines. Next is the Climate Change Commission. So the Climate Change Commission is an independent crown entity that advises the New Zealand government on climate change policy within the framework of the climate change response. So the commission was established as the successor to the Interim Climate Change Committee following the passage of the Zero Carbon Act in November 2019. So the Climate Change Commission is the lead policy-making body of the government tasked to coordinate, monitor, and evaluate government programs and ensure mainstreaming of climate change in national, local, and sectoral development plans towards a climate-resilient and climate-smart Philippines. Next is the United States Agency for International Development, also known as USAID. It's an independent agency of the U.S. federal government that is primarily responsible for administering civilian, foreign aid, and development assistance, with a budget of over $27 billion. So USAID is one of the largest official aid agencies in the world and accounts for more than half of all U.S. foreign assistance, the highest in the world in absolute dollar terms. So the USAID partners with the Philippines to drive inclusive economic growth and promote peace and stability. So USAID is the one who builds the country's self-reliance by strengthening the Philippines' ability to plan, finance, and implement its own development solutions. So next is the Code of Kalansiaw. Code of Kalansiaw. So the Code of Raha Kalansiaw was a supposed legal code in the epic history Maragtas that is said to have been written in 1433 by Dato Kalansiaw, a chief on the island of Negros in the Philippines. The code is now believed by many historians to have been a hoax and that it had actually been written in 1913 by Jose E. Marco as a part of his historical fiction Las Antiguas Leyendas de la Isla de Negros, or in English, The Ancient Legends of the Island of Negros, which he attributed to a priest named Jose Marco. So, in 1990, Philippine historian Teodoro Agoncillo described the code as a disputed document. Despite doubts on its authenticity, some history texts continue to present it as historical fact. So, Kalansiaw Code is the most extensive and severe law that prescribes harsh punishments. So, this code was decreed by Dato Kalansiaw about 100 years before the coming of the Spanish colonizers. So, this code contains 18 articles only, but enough to maintain peace and harmony. So, these are the laws of the Code of Kalansiaw, or Article. Article 1. You shall not kill, neither shall you steal, neither shall you do harm to the aged, lest you incur the danger of death. All those who infringe this order shall be condemned to death by being drowned in a river or in boiling water. Article 2. You shall obey. Let all your debts with a headman be met punctually. He who does not obey shall receive for the first time 100 lashes. If the debt is large, he shall be condemned to thrust his hand in boiling water thrice for the second time. He shall be beaten to death. Article 3. Obey you. Let no one have women that are very young nor more than he can support, nor be given to excessive lust. He who does not comply with, obey, and observe this order shall be condemned to swim for 3 hours for the first time and for the second time. For the second time to be beaten to death with sharp turns. So in Article 4, observe and obey. Let no one disturb the quiet of the graves. When passing by the caves and priests where they are, give respect to them. He who does not observe this shall be killed by ants or beaten to death with thorns. Article 5. You shall obey. He who exchanges for food, let it be always done in accordance with his word. He who does not comply shall be beaten for 1 hour. He who repeats the offense shall be exposed for 1 day among ants. Next is the Article 6. You shall be obliged to revere sites that are held in respect, such as those of trees of recognized worth and other sites. He who fails to comply shall pay with 1 month's work in gold or in honey. Article 7. They shall be put to death. He who kills trees of venerable appearance, who shoot arrows at night at old men and women, he who enters the house of the headman without permission, he who kills a shark or a streaked cayman. Article 8. slavery for a dome or a certain period of time, shall be suffered by those who steal away the women of the headmen, by him who keep ill-tempered dogs that bite the headmen, by him who burns the fields of another. Article 9. All this shall be beaten for 2 days, who sing while traveling by night, kill the manaul, tear the documents belonging to the headmen, are malicious liars, or who mock the dead. Article 10. So it is decreed an obligation that every mother teach secretly to her daughters matters pertaining to lust and prepare them for womanhood. Let not men be cruel nor punish their women when they catch them in the act of adultery. Whoever shall disobey shall be killed by being cut to pieces and thrown to the caimans. Article 11. These shall be burned, who by their strength or cunning have mocked at and escaped punishment, or who have killed young boys, or tried to steal away the women of the elders. So next is the Article 12. This shall be drowned, and all who interfere with their superiors, or their owners or masters, all those who abuse themselves through the lust, those who destroy their anitos or idols by breaking them or throwing them down. Next is Article 13. So all this shall be exposed to ants for half a day, who kill black cats during a new moon, or steal anything from the chiefs or agorangs, however small the object may be. Article 14. So they shall be made slave for life, who have beautiful daughters and deny them to the sons of chiefs, and with bad faith hide them away. Next is Article 15. Concerning beliefs and superstitions, they shall be beaten, who eat the diseased flesh of beasts, which they hold in respect, or the herb which they consider good, who wound or kill the young of the manaul or the white monkey. Next is Article 16. The fingers shall be cut off of all those who break idols of wood and clay in their alangans and temples, of those who destroy the daggers of the tagalons or break the drinking jars of the latter. Next is Article 17. So they shall be killed who profane sites where idols are kept, and sites where buried the sacred things of their dewatas and headmen. He who performs his necessities in those places shall be burned. Next is the Article 18, or the last article. Those who do not cause those rules to be obeyed, if they are headmen, they shall be put to death by being stoned and crushed. And if they are agorangs, they shall be placed in rivers to be eaten by sharks and caimans. Next is, so the 7 constitutional corrections of the Philippines. So there are 7 constitutional corrections in the Philippines. First is the New Bilibid Prison. Second is the San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm. Third is the Iwahig Penal Colony. Fourth is the Correctional Institution for Women. 5 is the Davao Penal Colony. 6 is the Sablayan Prison and Penal Farm. 7 is the Leyte Regional Prison. New Bilibid Prison. So the New Bilibid Prison, or NBP, in Muntinlupa, Metro Manila is the main insular penitentiary designed to house the prison population of the Philippines. It is maintained by the Bureau of Corrections, or BUCOR, under the Department of Justice. As of November 2021, the NBP housed 28,545 inmates, which exceeds its ideal capacity of 6,435. So, in 1940, the Commonwealth government transferred prisoners to the NBP from the old Bilibid prison in Manila. The remnants of the old facility were repurposed by the City of Manila as its own detention center, known today as Manila City Jail. So the penitentiary had an initial land area of 551 hectares or 1,260 acres, but 104 hectares or 260 acres were transferred to a housing project of the Department of Justice. Additional land of the NBP reservation is used for the Bureau of Corrections headquarters. So, during Japanese occupation of the Philippines during World War II, Bilibid was a prisoner of war and civilian internee camp where American soldiers and civilians were held by the Japanese. 1,200 internees and POWs were freed by the American Army on February 4, 1945. During the Battle of Manila, the government of the Philippines plans to create a regional prison in Nueva Ecija through a public-private partnership. So, the New Bilibid Prison in Muntinlupa City is the main insular penitentiary designed to house the prison population of the Philippines. So, it is maintained by the Bureau of Corrections, or BUCOR, under the Department of Justice. So as of October 2004, it has an inmate population of 6,747. The penitentiary had an initial land area of 551 hectares. 104 hectares of the facility were transferred to a housing project of the Department of Justice. The Bureau of Corrections has its headquarters in the NBP Reservation. Next is the San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm. So according to historical accounts, the San Ramon Prison was established in southern Zamboanga on August 21, 1870 through a royal decree promulgated in 1869. So it was established during the tenure of Governor General Ramon Blanco, whose patron saint the prison was named after. So the facility was originally established for persons convicted of political crimes. So it considered as the oldest penal facility in the country, prisoners in San Ramon were required to do agricultural work. During the Spanish-American War in 1898, the prisoners in San Ramon were hastily released and the buildings destroyed. In 1907, the American administration reestablished the prison farm. So in 1912, General John Pershing, Chief Executive of the Department of Mindanao and Sulu, classified the institution as a prison and penal colony and therein confined people sentenced by the courts under his jurisdiction. So under Pershing's supervision, several buildings with a capacity for 600 prisoners were constructed. After several years, the colony became practically self-supporting with 75,000 coconut trees which were planted at the beginning of Pershing's administration. So it contributing to the colony's self-sufficiency. Aside from coconuts, rice, corn, papaya, and other crops were also cultivated. So on November 1, 1905, the Reorganization Act number 1407 was approved, creating the Bureau of Prisons under the Department of Commerce and Police. So integrating the old Bilibid Prison, San Ramon Penal Colony, and the Wide Penal, the Philippine Coconut Authority took over management of the coconut farm from San Ramon. In 1995, Congresswoman Maria Clara Lubregat opposed the transfer of San Ramon Prison to Bongiao Town in the mountainous area of Zamboanga to give way to a special economic zone. So, the San Ramon Prison Penal Farm in Zamboanga City, Philippines, it was established to house the Muslim rebels and prisoners opposing the Spanish leadership. So, the prison is right in front of the Hulu Sea and is sprawled within a 1,414-hectare property. So it was on August 21, 1869 when the San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm was built. Decades later, when the Americans took over the country, the Bureau of Prisons was created under the supervision of the Department of Commerce and Police. Due to the havoc wreaked by the Spanish-American War, the penal farm was destroyed in 1907. It was then re-established and started to house prisoners from Mindanao. By 1915, it was placed under the protection of the Bureau of Prisons. Next is the Iwahig Penal Colony. So the Iwahig Prison and Penal Farm in Puerto Princesa City, Palawan, Philippines is one of 7 operating units of the Bureau of Corrections under the Department of Justice. So the Iwahig Prison and Penal Farm is one of the most popular prisons in the Philippines. It was established in 1902 by the United States for the Filipino prisoners who had fought with the Americans during their colonization in the Philippines. Iwahig Penal Colony. So this facility was established during the American occupation. It was, however, during the Spanish regime that Puerto Princesa was designated as a place where offenders sentenced to banishment were exiled. So a specific area of Puerto Princesa was selected as the site for a correctional facility. The American military carved out a prison facility in the rainforest of Puerto Princesa. So the institution had for its first superintendent Lieutenant George Wolf, a member of the U.S. Expeditionary Force who later became the first prisons director. So Governor Luke Wright authorized the establishment of a penal colony in the province of Palawan on November 16, 1904. So this penal settlement, which originally comprised an area of 22 acres, originally served as a depository for prisoners who could not be accommodated at the Bilibid prisons in Manila. In 1906, however, the Department of Commerce and Police, which later became the Department of Public Instruction, moved to turn the institution into the center of a penal colony, supervised in accordance with trends at the time. Through the department's efforts, the Philippine Commission of the United States government passed Act number 1723 in 1907, classifying the settlement as a penal institution. So the settlement was at first beset by attempted escapes, but under the supervision of Colonel John R. White of the Philippine Constabulary, who would become superintendent of Iwahig in 1906, the colony became a successful settlement. A merit system was devised for the prisoners and vocational activities were offered. These include farming, fishing, forestry, carpentry, and hospital paramedical work. Prisoners could choose the vocational activities they wanted. In 1955, Administrative Order No. 20 was promulgated by the President and implemented by the Secretary of Justice and the Secretary of Agriculture and Natural Resources. So this order allowed the distribution of colony lands for cultivation by deserving colonists. The order also contained the list of qualifications for colonists who wish to apply for a lot to cultivate, the conditions for the settlers' stay in this land, loan requirements, and marketing of the settlers' produce. Lots granted did not exceed 6 hectares. So, on August 16, 1959, a committee was created by President Carlos P. Garcia to study the state of national prisons. Accordingly, prisoners in Iwahig were divided into two groups, the settlers and colonists. So the settlers are those engaged in farming with their own benefit. They are the ones whose applications for land to cultivate have been approved. The government furnishes the land and initial requirements for tools, dwellings, and beasts of burden. So they are required to reimburse expenditures incurred for their maintenance and that of their families out of products of their farms. Upon the release from the colony, they receive whatever amount of money they have credited in their favor, after deducting the obligations they have. Iwahig is subdivided into 4 zones or districts. First is the central subcolony within area of 14,700 hectares. Second is the Santa Lucia with 9,685 hectares. Bontebli with 8,000 hectares and Inagawan with 13,000 hectares. So, Iwahig Prison and Penal Farm in Puerto Princesa City, Palawan, Philippines is one of 7 operating units of the Bureau of Corrections under the Department of Justice. So, the Spanish regime had earlier designated Puerto Princesa, Palawan as a place where offenders sentenced to banishment were exiled, but the facility was established only during the American occupation. So, Governor Luke Wright authorized the establishment of a penal colony in the province or Palawan on November 16, 1904. This penal settlement, which originally comprised an area of 22 acres, served as a depository for prisoners who could not be accommodated at the Bilibid prison in Manila. So, a prison facility was created by the American military in the rainforest of Puerto Princesa. So, Lieutenant George Wolfe, a member of the U.S. Expeditionary Force, was the prison's first director. Next is the Correctional Institution for Women. So, the Correctional Institution for Women or CIW is a women's prison located in Mandaluyong, Metro Manila, Philippines. So, the prison is operated by the Bureau of Corrections. The prison first opened on 18-hectare or 44-acre property on February 14, 1931. So, previously, women were held at the old Bilibid prison. So, when the Philippines had the death penalty, female inmates condemned to death were held at CIW. Ron Glackman of Asia Week described the women's death row as appearing like a secondary school. CIW was born via the signing of Act No. 3579 on November 1929, which authorized the transfer of all women inmates of the old Bilibid prison in Manila to a new facility. Some 270 female inmates were transferred in February 1931 to a building in Mandaluyong, then part of Rizal, that was initially called the Women's Prison. It was later renamed to CIW in keeping with emerging trends in penology, which emphasized correction rather than punishment. So the original building was gutted by fire in 1982 due to faulty wiring and was reconstructed more than a year later. So the Correctional Institution for Women is a women's prison located in Mandaluyong City, Metro Manila, Philippines. So the prison is operated by the Bureau of Corrections. So CIWM or the Correctional Institution for Women is the most recent facility organized in the Bureau of Corrections. It was only inaugurated in September 18, 2007, the second institution which branched out from the first and only penal establishment dedicated in rehabilitating female offenders. So next is the Davao Penal Colony. So Davao Prison and Penal Farm, formerly the Davao Penal Colony or DAPICOL, was established on January 21, 1932 in Panabo City, Davao del Norte, Philippines. So it has a land area of 30,000 hectares with a prison reservation of 8,000 hectares. So during World War II, the Davao Penal Colony was the biggest prison establishment in the country, which was used by the Japanese invading army as their imperial garrison. The Davao Penal Colony was formed in southern Philippines in 1932 on a land about 30,000 hectares in size. The prison complex itself had an area of about 8,000 hectares. So in December 1941, after the outbreak of the Pacific War, it held about 1,000 Japanese nationals guarded by Filipino military police reporting to an American commanding officer. In 1942, as Japanese troops closed in on the colony, many guards simply ran away and many prisoners escaped during the confusion. So during the Japanese occupation period, it was taken over by the Japanese army as a prisoners of war camp. About 2,000 Americans were held at Davao during the war. Prisoners were treated harshly in manners typical of most prisoners of war camps run by the Japanese during this period. So several hundred former Davao prisoners were aboard the transport Shinyo Maru when she was sunk by submarine USS Paddle off the coast of Mindanao on 7 September 1944. So when American troops arrived at Davao Penal Colony, they encountered bodies of dead prisoners decomposing at the places of their deaths without having been buried. So the Davao Prison and Penal Farm was established on January 21, 1932 in Panabo City, Davao del Norte, Philippines. So it has an land area of 30,000 hectares with a prison reservation of 8,000 hectares. Next is the Sablayan Prison and Penal Farm in Occidental Mindoro. So, Sablayan Prison and Penal Farm, nearer to Manila than other penal colonies. The Sablayan Penal Colony is located in Occidental Mindoro and relatively new, established on September 26, 1954 by virtue of Presidential Proclamation No. 72. The penal colony has a total land area of approximately 16,190 hectares. So, prison records show that the first colonists and employees arrived in Sablayan on January 15, 1955. Since then, several buildings have been constructed, including the colonists' dormitories, employees' quarters, guardhouse, schoolhouse, chapel, recreation hall, and post exchange. So there are three sub-colonies were later organized. One is a reservation which this day remains part of a protected rainforest. Another is in a coastal area. The third was used by the national government as a relocation site for refugees from the eruption of Mount Pinatubo eruption in 1991. So the Sablayan Prison is a facility where prisoners from NBP are brought for decongestion purposes. It follows the same colony standards as other penal farms. Unlike any other the usual penal colony, the prisoners here are almost enjoying their freedom. Instead of being locked down inside concrete structures with metal bars, they can roam around the area without so much restriction. They are also made to till the land area so as to have their own supply of at least basic food requirements for during their stay. So prisoners are also allowed to build up their nipa huts, and since it is a mix of different religion, churches and worship houses were constructed to cater various religions of the prisoners. So some inmates were also allowed to have their wife or husband to live with them inside the colony. This is evident by some playground around the area. So the penal also provides an access road to vehicles from Sablayan going to Abra de Ilog Port. Leyte Regional Prison. So the youngest among the Bureau of Corrections penal colonies. The Leyte Regional Prison or LRP was created by virtue of PD number 28 and was established on January 16, 1973 under Presidential Decree number 1101. It is located in Barangay Mahagna, Abuyog, Leyte, some 66 kilometers from Abuyog town proper. It is situated on a 861.66 hectares forested area on top of a mountain, surrounded by mountain ranges. It is also composed of two communities, the enclosed community and the open community. Prisoners who are in the enclosed community are those who belong to the medium and maximum security, while prisoners who are in the open community belong to the minimum security. As of March 19, 1997, there are about 980 prisoners housed in this regional prison, with 204 at the maximum security, 550 at the medium security, and 226 at the minimum security prison. The prison admits convicted offenders from Region 6 and from the National Penitentiary in Muntinlupa. So, the Leyte Regional Prison in Aboyog, Leyte is situated in Aboyog, Southern Leyte, and was established a year after the declaration of martial law in 1972 by virtue of Presidential Decree No. 28. While its plantelia and institutional plan were almost ideal, lack of funds made the prison unable to realize its full potential, and its facilities are often below par compared with those of other established penal farms. So the LRP has an inmate capacity of 500. It follows the same agricultural format as the main correctional program, in addition to some rehabilitation activities. So the prison admits convicted offenders from Region 6 and from the National Penitentiary in Muntinlupa. Provincial Jail System. So, provincial jail system was first established in 1910 under the American regime, supervised and controlled by the provincial government and headed by the provincial jail warden. On the other hand, provincial jails are under the supervision and control of the provincial government. It appears that provincial jails, which are directly under the supervision and control of the provincial government, have better facilities and are better managed as compared to that of the city and municipal jails. So, vision. An institution managed by God-centered professionals and trained personnel to serve as the principal catalyst for rehabilitation or restoration that leads to reformation of the social, physical, and spiritual aspects of persons being detained to develop as law-abiding citizens for eventual reintegration into the mainstream of society. Mission. So the office of the provincial warden shall promote safe and total detainment and rehabilitation or restoration of detainees under its custody. So the goals and objectives of the provincial jail system. So office of the provincial warden is committed to carry out effective implementation of all programs, projects and activities relating to jail detainment and rehabilitation of prisoners being sentenced, detained or held for trial by the Court of Justice. Develop and attend to the welfare of detainees in the provincial jail by providing subsistence and other welfare benefits and through provision of jail decongestion programs. Provide protection services and prepare the inmates socially, physically, mentally, and spiritually to become productive citizens for the eventual reintegration into the mainstream of society upon pardon or release. Public Attorney's Office or PAO. So the Public Attorney's Office or PAO is a attached agency of the Department of Justice which provides indigent litigants free legal assistance. So it also provides indigent sector access to counsel at the time of need, implement the constitutional guarantee of free access to courts, due process, and able protection of the laws. So the PAO shall be an independent and autonomous office but attached to the Department of Justice in accordance with Section 38 or 3, Chapter 7 of Book 4 of this code for purposes of policy and program coordination. So the mission of PAO. So provide indigent litigants free access to courts, judicial and quasi-judicial agencies by rendering legal assistance in consonance with a constitutional mandate that free access to courts shall not be denied by reason of poverty. So the PAO's mission is to provide the indigent litigants, the oppressed, marginalized, and underprivileged members of the society free access to courts, judicial and quasi-judicial agencies by rendering legal services counseling and assistance in consonance with the constitutional mandate that free access to courts shall not be denied to any person by reason of poverty in order to ensure the rule of law, truth, and social justice. PAU's vision, to be a God-centered and dynamic bureaucracy that is responsive to the ever-growing legal needs of the indigents, led by highly competent, world-class, development-oriented, and nationalistic leaders. So the PAU's vision is, as the principal law office of the government shall be composed of highly motivated, effective, and empowered public servants, consistently responsive to the ever-growing legal needs of the indigents and other qualified persons, utilizing modern facilities, information technology patterns, and tools needed for efficient delivery of free legal aid services to promote access to justice, truth, and peace. So, the powers and functions of PAU. So, the PAU shall independently discharge its mandate to render free of charge legal representation, assistance, and counseling to indigent persons in criminal, civil, labor, administrative, and other quasi-judicial cases. In the exigency of the service, the PAU may be called upon by proper government authorities to render such service to other persons, subject to existing laws, rules, and regulations. That's all. Thank you.